My name is Ken Dumbo, the MC with the sauce. Don't forget to subscribe to JQ.
Gone. Now, the move has sent shockwaves through various circles, and it raises serious questions about governance, human rights, and the country's international, the deeper implications, both immediate and in the long term. We are joined by a key political voice. He is the Secretary General of the Patriotic Front and Tonse Alliance, also a former minister, a prominent figure in the opposition, in the name of Honorable Rafo Nakachinda. Welcome to State of the Nation.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Pastor Mambwe, Mr. Mambwe. I mean, you hold different titles, and good evening to our viewers. I am honored that after a long time we're able to interact, and I look forward to an engaging discussion this evening.
You're most welcome. And dear viewers, you can join the conversation on channel 279 on DSTV, GoTV 27 and Topstar 102, and multiple platforms online, KBN YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page, and many other channels that are tapping into this feed. Now, before I come to your to your yard as Patriotic Front, maybe first of all let's unpack this big elephant that is in the room. As I've said in my introductory remarks, 50 million United States dollars has gone, and perhaps never to come back unless maybe we make amends. So, Honorable Nakachinda, let me begin by getting your views on the reasons given and advanced by the U.S. Ambassador, Mr. Gonzalez, regarding what triggered this very difficult decision. Is it failure by the government to act on the reported theft of medical products meant for Zambia, or indeed it might be a decision that could have been long coming?
Well, I think the starting point is for us as people, generally as Zambians, reflecting on what has been pronounced. It is an indictment against all of us, over 20 million Zambians, because the decision to usher in a government under the UPND was our decision. Even when there are many warnings, indicators that our friends may not have what it takes to govern this country. In the face of what they were presenting as promises and pronouncements they were making, they were unrealistic. And if you look at credentials, even at a level of the one they were presenting as flag bearer for presidents, didn't have any experience when it comes to governance or the governance of a nation. Outside the fact that he's a businessman, he's been he has some kind of experience in corporate governance, but there are many indicators that suggested that even the so-called business and so on didn't have very credible, traceable, background and legacy. We both ushered them into government. From the onset, clearly, we noticed that we may have duped ourselves to have a people whose focus and interest is purely towards personal interest. the warnings around issues of corruption and theft at the Ministry of Health were manifest just a few months after they got into government. You remember the scandal of the $100 million deal or contract that was exposed with demands that were coming from officials from the Ministry of Health. The former Minister of Health was implicated. There were letters, there were audios and everything. What we saw, which was very, very dangerous, was that there was a clear attempt on the part of the head of the executive to shield that component. When as opposition pushed and pushed and even reported at the SEC that this cannot go without being attended to, what we saw was a permanent secretary, and even reported at the SEC that this cannot go without being attended to. What we saw was a permanent secretary being fired, who later on, even having been fired, and he went and reported at SEC, he was exonerated that he was an innocent person. But that scandal up to today, there is no explanation on how people were directly involved and exposed. That matter was resolved. Fast forward, the issue of the procurement of medication. Of course, though it's an extension to local government, the procurement ambulances and all those things, only we are pointing to the fact that there is something wrong going on in the health sector that justifiably would cause those who are supporting the sector as cooperating partners would definitely be concerned, because they are putting money from the taxpayer within the jurisdiction, in this case the American people. They are expected to account for those monies. And if the people who, as a nation and as a people who present that we are vulnerable in certain areas we need support, are acted as reckless as the UPND have demonstrated, going by these examples I've given, today is a sad day for this country, because while there is this justification, as it were, of the decisions, which is rightfully, expected of a responsible, government to take the decision they took. If you are giving people aid or assistance, and they are as reckless and as careless as the UPND have been in tolerating, and I think the choice of words must alarm all of us. They are not just talking about corruption. Not that it's anything good or better, but they are saying blatant theft, clear theft, which can be traced to specific individuals. How come up to today people have not been brought to book?
Right.
So to that effect, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema is the number one culprit, because if he can't act, and he has not been able to act against those who have been found liable, it means that he either knows something about it or is involved. Because how come he makes so much noise in talking about his commitment to the fight against corruption, but clear evidence of corrupt activities, he has not been able to deal with it? We had a minister transferred, not held accountable, but transferred to another ministry. What does it say? Basically, you can conduct such things or preside over such activities and be rewarded. So he is more inclined to consider what he considered at a particular point, the political interest that he may have, either in an individual or a decision he makes, over and above the virtues we are supposed to inculcate in government for us to be able to protect our resources and those resources that are offered to us to be able to mitigate where we may lack.
There is an insinuation. There is an insinuation within the UPND administration that the action by the United States of America is not as a result of the government of the day in Zambia, but as a result of civil servants who have been stealing. How do you react to that?
The UPND have been they came into government through propaganda. They came into government through political rhetoric. Unfortunately, when they were given the opportunity to get a hold of the levers, mistreated civil servants, to have a situation where over 400 to 500 civil servants have been packed at cabinet office in either dodge or give an excuse by way of blaming the previous government. And if it's not the previous government, because now they've been in government for 10 years, if there is a government that has, mistreated civil servants, to have a situation where over 400 to 500 civil servants have been packed at cabinet office, getting a pay, whilst they have employed those quote-unquote associated with UPND, some of them on the basis of nepotism, some of them, though they are uncomfortable with this, but it's a reality based on ethnic consideration, a tribal consideration, and within family trees and all that.
Is that an accusation that you can prove?
I mean, if we were to go to the statistics, the only thing that you need to do in dealing with this matter is to present the names as they are, because those are realities, they are facts. It's not an issue where you are making, you are alleging, not necessarily on the basis of perception. It's a reality. You can look at the statistics at civil servant level, whether it is, first of all, the principal people that have been appointed in terms of cabinet, whether it comes to the principal people that have been appointed at permanent level, permanent secretary level, directors, and you go down. I can tell you that most of the people who are career civil servants have been removed in their positions, packed at cabinet office. And to that effect, it has created a challenge in being able to work with the system and the bureaucracies that have been deliberately put there to make sure that the government functions effectively. Those who have the experience to be able to run the government machinery have been removed. Hence the scandals and haphazardness that has led to now, critical, cooperating partners like Americans losing confidence. They have tried to advise. This is not the first time the voice from the US has been expressed or echoed, not only to give warning, but to also give facts on areas where they're uncomfortable. The Americans have spoken about the agriculture sector in terms of how it's unjustifiable for Zambia to be hungry, even when, of course, there could be the excuse of the drought. Because the previous government, which is the PF government, left stocks in the reserves that would last us at least more than 2 years, and therefore would not be experiencing the expensive minimum, which is a staple food in this country, had people been prudent the way it used to be in the previous government under Patriotic Front.
Right.
Because we're able to put measures that signaled that we're patriotic enough to prioritize our people before we can look about neighbors. For Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, he focused on the neighbors instead of prioritizing the local people. So to that effect, before we completely go to the impact of this decision that the Americans have made, I want to indicate that the UPND and Mr. Hakainde Hichilema have also failed when it comes to diplomatic engagement, what at personal level I may call diplomatic warfare. Diplomatic warfare, for you to be able to gain in your interaction and relationship with other countries and other stakeholders, cooperating partners, requires that you study historical facts and be able to make decisions at present level that will impact the future positively. When Mr. Hakainde Hichilema was brought into office, or got into office, the first challenge that we saw in his approach to geopolitics was that he decided to align himself. And there was resistance from all of us stakeholders in Zambia to say, no, you can't take such a reckless stance. Dr. Kaunda was not a fool to take a stance with his compatriots on the continent that will not be aligned. And they started what they called a non-aligned movement. To that effect, they don't want to start carrying the burden of advancing the interests of one party against the other. But they're going to be friends with everybody, depending on the interest they have with that particular country, that particular set of, in this case, maybe we talk of the West and the East. There was no conflict whatsoever because they were non-aligned, that they would deal with the East and deal with the West without being conflicted. But the UPND government under Hakainde Hichilema himself made fundamental decisions and choices. Now, fast forward, because the geopolitics are dynamic and they change every other day. What the American ambassador said is deeper than just talking about the health sector. Yes, we'll deal with the impact of the decision I made to cut aid. But I can tell you, as Zambia as a country, there are challenges that are coming ahead. Mr. Hakainde Hichilema recklessly tried to align himself not with America per se, but with a ruling party, in this case, the Democrats, and tried to parrot their policies and try to adopt them. And to that effect, in a way, was going against the policies of the Republicans. Life as it will have it, now the Democrats are out, we have the Republicans. Okay? And because you have no control as Zambia, what happens in America, therefore you can't reduce yourself to be partisan in your approach of your engagement with the American people. So that has created a problem. Further on, we have been advising this president to leave the church alone, holistically. But somehow, you remember a few years ago, there was even some discussion around a systematic attempt by government to reduce the influence of the Catholic Church here in Zambia. And the specific clergy within the Catholic Church were targeted, among them Archbishop Alec Band, who was even called Lucifer by a high-ranking official within the UPND party called the Secretary General.
Maybe we'll come to that.
As I just learned, I know you have a lot to want us to discuss.
Yes.
Today, you mess up in terms of your relationship with America because you became partisan. The Republicans are in government. You mess up with the Catholic Church by harassing Archbishop and the clergy within the Catholic Church and your agenda, which is very clear. Today, we have a Pope who has been elected, an American Pope. Those who have experience in terms of understanding geopolitics and understanding diplomacy, that has put Mr. Hakainde Hichilema in a bind. What the ambassador pronounced today, with all these factors that we're talking about, it requires experienced hands for us to navigate. Otherwise, we are in trouble as a country.
Earlier, you talked about the propensity of the UPND administration to pass on the blame game, most particularly to the PF over a number of issues. In this case, the U.S. diplomat today was very, very categorical when he stated that they've investigated and uncovered the theft of medical products since late 2021. And the timing places the UPND squarely in the blame box. It looks like this time they cannot say it wasn't us.
Of course. The whole scandal was, covered through this propaganda. That's how come I qualified my submission from the onset that our friends had entered into government through propaganda and lies and deceit. And they have been confident that they will be able to sustain their staying government through propaganda, lies, and deceit. But as it were, lies may run fast, but the truth surely comes slowly, but it comes to diminish the potency of lies, in due time. This is a due time. The UPND have found themselves in a bind. They can't lie anymore because the investigations which are telling to have 1.4 billion kwacha, looking at the status of the economy, looking at the fact that Mr. Hakainde Hichilema doesn't even have options, outside having his friends and business partners and others, I think from some angles that we suspect and the allegations of benefit. The economy is on its floor. That Dr. Msokotwani has lost, ideas on how he can turn things around.
Well, he can argue with you that even the IMF is saying they are projecting 6% growth in terms of GDP.
Anybody who speaks the language of the IMF and imperialists is headed for disaster. That's not anything to celebrate. What is the basis for which the economy will grow, at the rates that they are projecting? Based on what? Theoretical analysis of things? Because as a country, when it comes to production, we're at zero. The little, activities in terms of production is in the hands of foreigners. Whatever they are producing, which mainly is raw material is going out of the country. And they have also packaged through global empires, the whole tax regime and deals they have cut with this government that is more inclined towards supporting capital flight. So, Mr. Mambo, we are in a bind. This government has allowed itself to be captured. They were captured maybe even when they're in opposition. They came into government thinking that the so-called friends who sponsored them will be able to redeem them, without realizing that every businessman who comes at the table, they are not coming to advance your interests. They are profit-oriented, individuals. That's what business is all about. If I come into a deal with you and I said I need to partner with you and the shareholders of KBN, I'm not coming to come and advance your interest. I'm coming to gain profit. If I'm going to invest money, time, and everything into this, it's because I've projected that which I'll gain out of this particular place. So we should never deal with whether it's the Chinese, whether it's the Americans, whether it's the West, from a point of view that these are people with so much benevolence and so much grace that they are coming to the table to try and advance our interests. This business of sitting with IMF has proven over the years that they have been a tool for imperialists, quote unquote, to be able to keep us under their thumb. The incentives they offer us are never there to liberate us. They are always there to keep us oppressed, gasping for life, so that you are always desperate to seek for help when in fact help is within your house.
Right.
What we need are radical, patriotic decisions. Today, Ramambwe, we have an example that this thing can be done on the continent of Africa. Burkina Faso, as a young man in his 30s to 40s, okay, who has just made simple fundamental decisions to say the wealth of this country will be managed by us. Those who have been using our wealth go and make money, and they even bring our money to lend to us in form of aid, will not allow that. So go and survive with your resources, allow us to manage our own resources. Within a short space of time of 1 year to 2 years, Burkina Faso has paid all its debt. IMF will come and convince us that the close to $20 billion now, I think it's over 20 billion with the rate at which our friends have been borrowing, that is beyond our equity. It's a lie, Mamambwe. Just a mining sector itself, if you pick 2-3 mines and you look at the lifespan of those mines and the deposits of specific minerals in those mines, and you look at the equity, just 2-3 mines, they're able to swallow 3 times possibly the debt that we have. But those mines are not in our hands.
Right. Now, if you're just joining us, you're watching State of the Nation, and we're looking at the deeper implications of the aid cut to the tune of 50 million that was announced today by the U.S. Ambassador Michael Gonzalez. Now, just for the benefit of our viewers, Director, please show us that clip. Let's listen just for a few minutes in case someone was out of town, out of the country, they just flew in and they don't know the genesis of this. Here is a clip from Mr. Michael Gonzalez, the U.S. Ambassador to Zambia. Just a little bit, and then we'll come back and continue the discussion.
That's 1.4 billion kwacha in annual aid to Zambia provided for medications and medical supplies. For more than 1 year, the government of the United States has requested tangible action from the government of Zambia to respond to the countrywide systematic theft of these products provided by the United States. In the face of minimal action, responsive action by the government of Zambia, the United States is taking necessary steps to safeguard and ensure the accountability of U.S. American taxpayer funds. For more than 60 years, the United States and Zambia have shared a strong friendship. Because of our commitment to Zambia and the Zambian people, in recent years, the United States has invested more than $600 million a year. That's nearly 17 billion kwacha annually toward our shared goals of economic development and improved health and public well-being. Roughly 1 in every 3 kwacha spent on public health in Zambia comes as grant assistance from the American people. As part of this, in recent years, the United States has provided approximately $128 million annually. That's about 3.5 billion kwacha every year to buy medication. That's 1.4 billion kwacha in annual aid to Zambia provided for medications and medical supplies. For more than 1 year, the government of the United States has requested tangible action from the government of Zambia to respond to the countrywide systematic theft of these products provided by the United States. In the face of minimal action, responsive action by the government of Zambia, the United States is taking necessary steps to safeguard and ensure the accountability of U.S. American taxpayer funds. For more than 60 years, the United States and Zambia have shared a strong friendship. Because of our commitment to Zambia and the Zambian people, in recent years, the United States has invested more than $600 million a year. That's nearly 17 billion kwacha annually toward our shared goals of economic development and improved health and public well-being. Roughly 1 in every 3 kwacha spent on public health in Zambia comes as grant assistance from the American people. As part of this, in recent years, the United States has provided approximately $128 million annually. That's about 3.5 billion kwacha every year to buy medications to treat HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis, as well as to provide the technical and operational support kwacha spent on public health in Zambia comes as grant assistance from the American people. As part of this, in recent years, the United States has provided approximately $128 million annually. That's about 3.5 billion kwacha every year to buy medications to treat HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis. It is with a heavy heart that I must announce that the United States is cutting $50 million, that's 1.4 billion kwacha, in annual aid to Zambia provided for medications and medical supplies. For more than 1 year, the government of the United States has requested tangible action from the government of Zambia to respond to the countrywide systematic theft of these products provided by the United States. In the face of minimal action, responsive action by the government of Zambia, the United States is taking necessary steps to safeguard and ensure the accountability of U.S. American taxpayer funds. For more than 60 years, the United States and Zambia have shared a strong friendship. Because of our commitment to Zambia and the Zambian people, in recent years, the United States has invested more than $600 million a year. That's nearly 17 billion kwacha annually toward our shared goals of economic development and improved health and public well-being. Roughly.
Honorable Nakachinda is my guest, is the Secretary General for PF and Tonse Alliance. That's just a snippet of the video from the American ambassador, Mr. Michael Gonzalez. He reviews quite a lot. Is it shocking to you to hear him say for over a year, he and his staff have been meeting government officials, asking government officials to act, to show concern, to show that they are as concerned as the American taxpayers about what he called blatant theft? Are you shocked that for 1 year the government never responded? Is it shocking today that we are in the space where we are?
It's never shocking. The attitude of the UPND government is that as far as they are concerned, they even call it Bingarato. Somebody has, warped their ideology towards politicking. They believe that trickery, manipulation is the way to go, when in fact honesty and transparency is what would have saved the day. The warnings, the interaction, diplomatic engagement on the part of the Americans, both on the part of government and the opposition, has been consistent for over a year. So the decision so far made is not one that has come abruptly. It is one that has come because even when fingers have been pointed towards the wrongs that were being done by UPND, there has always been a justification. You have seen how they have unleashed the likes of Tabokawan. They have unleashed now the likes of Muetwa to basically advance propaganda. If they have no answer, then they will go and start attacking individuals personally. So you will see how they're going to be attacking Gonzalez. It will no longer about the issues he has raised. They have no answer. But as a result of this one disastrous and life-threatening decision, we have about 1.3 million Zambians living with HIV, whose survival is on the ARV that are supplied. Those are at risk already by just that decision. We have a number of people, because obviously when it comes to tuberculosis, scientifically, we are told that everybody has a certain degree of, because tuberculosis is airborne. We breathe, we're in the same environment. The only thing is that there are people with tuberculosis, but because of their immune system, they may not show symptoms. But with this development, you're going to have, people, the death rate increasing because people are not able to contain the effect of some of these diseases that if you talk to health experts, they'll tell you they are the the most devastating diseases that are taking lives of our people. Malaria, for example. You know, because the American people support the health sector to a tune of $600 million annually. And 75% of that money goes towards HIV, ARVs, tuberculosis, and sexually transmitted diseases, particularly also maternal and child health care. That's where the money goes. So this is a step that should worry everybody. All those who are in government are supposed, first of all, to retreat and reflect, instead of getting into a mode of wanting to justify themselves. The wording is very clear: theft. So who has been stealing? The ambassador was very clear that they have gone to over 2,000, pharmacies and, chemistries and these kiosks that sell medicine, and they have discovered that most of the medicine that is being sold in those private entities are actually, traced to the medicine that is provided as a result of their support. So who is in this business? Now, there are people who may want to start saying, in PF. But the report and the basis for which this decision was made is an analysis from the late 2021, meaning that there were already people within UPND who had a template on how they are going to take advantage of the health sector and the support from the Americans and other stakeholders to siphon money for their personal benefit. Because this theft cannot be said to be benefiting the Zambian people. This theft is benefiting who? Is benefiting private pockets of those who are privileged within the UPND government.
You've been in government before. Is it possible that you have such a red flag brought to your attention by a cooperating partner and you decide to take your sweet time to react? What would warrant such a lackluster response and approach to a matter as grave as this? You are saying how many? 1.1 million people?
1.8 million, 1.3 million.
And government is aware. Yes. 1.3 million people and are at risk. Yes, and if America pulls the plug,
as it has happened,
these people might end up dying.
Yes.
But what in a comfortable chair as a government official would make you look away when such a report is being brought to your table, not by a whistleblower, but by the actual cooperating partner who has invested time, resource, and effort to go around the country in all 10 provinces and say, this is what we have found, and you don't act?
Wamambwe, today we are dancing around a $50 million aid that has been cut. But there was a $100 million deal exposed. What happened? Covered. Without anybody thinking the impact of such a corrupt deal it would have on the ordinary Zambia. Covering political allies. This $50 million cut, 1.4 billion kwacha, has gotten the UPN have gotten us to this level because they were massaging the processes to cover individuals. Okay? Masawa is removed. Elijah Muchima is brought into office. Has there been any solution? There has just been, blank, shots of warnings from the president to the minister, no action. And it's about theft. It's about corruption. What was the hallmark of the campaign message of Mr. Kandejam? Wasn't it about stemming corruption out of government? How come he can't see blatant corruption and theft? It has to take an American to come and see it. And even when the American has told you, we put money here, we've been concerned, we have investigated, and there is theft of medicines that has come as a result of our aid at the expense of the taxpayer in America, and we can't tolerate it. And you pay no attention. Over 1 year, actually not over 1 year, from 2021, late 2021 up to today, is how many years? 5 years, 4 years. It's recklessness. Here, Mr. Kainde Hichilema is in the dock, and the lives are about to be lost en masse in millions as a result of this one particular decision. It is expected that almost immediately, it's not even the Minister of Health to address the nation. It is Mr. Hakainde himself who should have addressed the nation. And he should address the nation to apologize that under his watch, such activities will take place not for 1 month, not for 2 months, but for close to 4 years, and the lives of people at stake. You know, the loss of even one life in a manner that would be, somebody would be held responsible, that they caused that either out of negligence, out of recklessness, or indeed they caused it directly, is supposed to be a concern to people who are in government if they are patriotic. That's how come the entire American machinery, the entire UK machinery would be activated to go and rescue one citizen of America who's found in an awkward situation and their life is threatened outside the jurisdiction. In Zambia, our people who are here are basically dependent on ARVs. They will go to the clinic and find there's nothing like that.
Now, $50 million in terms of being a cut for annual funding is not a joke, Honorable Nakachinda. In your view, to what extent will this affect the ordinary citizens? And I earlier heard you talk about the performance of the economy. Do you think the UPND administration has contingency plan to plug this hole that has been left yawning by this one decision from the American people?
This government is broke. Okay? Just that one plug that the Americans have put, close to 16,000 healthcare workers will be affected. Those that are providing a service around issues of HIV, issues of malaria, and so on, they'll be affected because they are dependent on these funds. So it's not just a threat to human life, it's also basically job cuts immediately to a level of having 16,000 workers who will be affected immediately. 16,000. And in Zambia, 16,000, every household for a responsible, man and woman or a couple, you're talking of an average of 8 people per family. So 16,000, people you multiply by possibly 8, 10. Where will it be taking you? 1.6, 160, thousand, people be affected by just this one, decision that has been made.
Let's talk about diplomacy. I mean, from your perspective as a former, government official, former minister for that matter, do you think this is purely a diplomatic decision, or are there some other deeper considerations such as perhaps governance, democracy, our record at international level and international standing as a nation? Or this is purely a matter of saying, let's save our American taxpayers the headache of lining private individuals' pockets? Could there be deeper diplomatic implications that may have informed this decision?
Definitely. The Americans have been on the African continent, partnered with African countries for decades now, even in areas where there are deeper challenges in relation to issues of corruption and so on. But the Americans have never tolerated issues of compromising democracy and governance. Okay? Just the introduction of the Cyber and Security Crime Act in itself is a blow, because it speaks to fundamental freedoms of citizens, the freedom and right of expression. The Americans were the first ones at the time that the bill went through in Parliament because of the arrogance of numbers, to warn their citizens. In diplomacy, the wording of that letter itself should be able to signal to the president, signal to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, signal to all those responsible to analyze our relationship with the outsiders, that I think there's a red flag here. And immediately the president should have been advised, don't assent to to this bill or to this act until we have been able to clarify different issues. Their attempt to amend the constitution, not only by those which Kasuna attempted to explain, because in the first place it's scandalous to have the Minister of Justice go to the floor of the House to issue a ministerial statement over a proposed amendment of the Constitution when there is no bill in place. So what was she talking to? Everything was upside down. But because the president went and made a reckless statement in Kasama during Women's Day, the entire government machinery started running to try and justify the pronouncement of the president. And now we are on the path of wanting to amend the Constitution. He himself as president, if you sat with him, he doesn't even fully comprehend what they intend to do, except the fact that in his mind, he needs to tweak the Constitution to give himself advantage in 2026 and be able to guarantee a window at which he can make himself a life president.
I need us to go to issues to do with your party, but maybe allow me to ask this one question over the implications of the $50 million cut. Critics say this could be a wake-up call for us to re-examine our foreign policy, while others call this as political bullying, that maybe America is actually exercising political bullying over a nation as fragile as Zambia. What's your take? Could this be a rebuke or an opportunity for realignment in our foreign policy?
Well, I think, like I said at first, as Zambia, we should have by now gravitated towards economic independence. And I think we're, slowly but sure moving, if not crawling, towards that direction. But the UPND has reversed every effort of almost close to 55 years by, first of all, allowing themselves to be captured while in opposition, just because of ambition and as an unquenchable desire to form government without a plan. Because unfortunately, the UPND and Misaka and HMA felt that occupying government offices as president and so on is an achievement. That's not an achievement. And I can tell you I'm an advocate of the need for us as a country to whip ourselves back to the virtues of patriotism, the love for country more than you love yourself. Becoming a president, Pastor Mambwe, Mr. Mambwe, is not an achievement. It is what you do when you are given that privilege that could be considered whether you have succeeded or not. Even the appetite sometimes even among opposition, when you see how people adjusting, for an opportunity to be president, only speaks to the fact that there are people who think, and their thinking is skewed toward thinking that if you have a chance to be president, the courtesies and all the facilities accorded to you make you, look like you have succeeded. All the salutes and all the guard of honor and all those glamorous ceremonial things that they subject, presidents and ministers and everything to is not achievement. It's what you do in that office that will affect the livelihood of an ordinary Zambian. The UPND have failed, they're a disaster, and now they tell the result is having even those that we perceive to have been their friends beginning to make such radical decisions because the Americans,
let's come back to,
we're more inclined towards supporting our friends.
Let's come back to your doorsteps in the Patriotic Front on the 1st of May 2025. We saw a dramatic political turn of one Mao Sampa, who was a runaway kid, was very critical of the ECO-led faction coming round at an event that you attended and seemingly giving the public some cosmetic reunion of some sort. What should the Zambian people make of this? I mean, you were two different warring camps and suddenly you are embracing. I saw some warm embrace around the table. What should the Zambian people make of that moment right there on the screen?
I know. I appreciate the fact that you can be very humorous, Mr. Mambo, especially that people are shocked with what just happened. To try and suggest that there was a cosmetic embrace and all that. First of all, Mr. Mao Sampa did what he did, which was detrimental to the unity and survival of the party in 2023. And from the onset, of course, it ushered issues of litigations and all kinds of things. But at the back of our mind, we knew that the core of the Zambian people around this issue was that you need to rise above these, differences that sometimes could even be personal and emotive, and look at the bigger picture. And sometimes there are people who receive the message, and comprehend it within record time. For some people, it takes a bit of time. And I think for Mao Sampa, it took a bit of time. If you just pluck out what he said, he basically, first of all, pointed out the fact that he had attempted to go to different promises. The message he was finding there consistent was that what he did was not right, and he needed to come back to the fore. There were no two factions. There was only one activity which the UPND took advantage of, and we know the story and what transpired and how the police and other institutions, were, pepped to support an illegality. But the good thing and the miracle is that Mao Sampa and his colleagues realized that they were on the wrong trajectory, and to that effect, they were willing to come to the table. We reconciled, and after all the matters have been discussed behind the scenes, what you saw on that particular day was basically our announcement of the fact that we have even gone to court to present our reconciliatory agreement through a concert judgment that we have presented to court. Of course, the UPND are not happy with that, because within their strategy to face the 2026 election is based on how best they can destabilize the opposition. And the main target has been Patriotic Front. But Patriotic Front has demonstrated resilience and unity that is exceptional from 2021 up to today. And I can guarantee you, it's not just a Mao Sampa issue, and many other factors, including our engagement with other opposition political parties, because we are not stopping. The Zambian people want a united voice within the opposition. We're going to bend backwards. We're going to engage with all stakeholders, civil society, so that we can be able to redeem the Zambian people from the disastrous government of UPND.
Is this reconciliation really, premised on shared values, or is just because you are sensing an election is around the corner, let's put our house together? Are we not going to see a resurgence of this past the election? Could this be a marriage of convenience? Because if you had shared values, this wouldn't have arisen in the first place.
Yeah, but life, the way it is that we learn from every occurrence. Human beings, as it were, we are driven by different circumstances. Some people are overwhelmed emotionally. Some people are overwhelmed by anger. Some people are overwhelmed by disappointment. There are people even who are overwhelmed by being happy. You've seen people who develop high blood pressure when they're upset. There are others who even develop high blood pressure when they're very happy. So life deals with people from different angles. For now, I think what is important is that we've been able to find each other. And fundamentally, unity in opposition is critical, starting with unity in Patriotic Front. So the real value and principle that we are dealing with is not personal semantics and all that. It's the fact that We have the country before us. I have personal interest. Mao Sampa has personal interest. Other people have personal interest. The question that arises, are we willing, all of us, to subordinate our personal interests to make sure that the interest of the Zambian people is prioritized?
Coming to Rafo Nakachinda as SG, you seem to be basking in the double glory of double anointing, SGPF and SG Mao Sampa. How did you receive that, anointing of SG for Mao Sampa when you are already SG? On a lighter note.
Well, I think I joked even at a press briefing. I mean, when Mao Sampa decided to make that decision and write the letter, I was saying to people, I already know that I'm a man. I didn't need to prove to anybody. So if my Mambo comes and says, oh, Mr. Nakachinda, you're a man, surely should I say no? You are just affirming what is already there. So to that effect, that appointment of Secretary General was just affirming what was already existing. So I needed not to debate it. Basically, that's the position.
Right. So on a related note, we have seen after all of that, Mr. Robert Chavinga of Mafinga, has continued parading himself as a legitimate president of PF. Even at his recent press conference, he flashed around a printout from the Registrar of Societies and saying, all of you are just wasting your time. He is the legit president according to the records held at Registrar of Societies.
Well, I have said on other forums that personally I refuse to be dragged into discussing and making Robert Chavinga a subject of discussion. Because in the interest of democracy and national building, even the fourth estate should be careful not to entertain society misfits.
Well,
in discussion,
we clearly understand where you are coming from,
right?
But there's a public truth we cannot run away from,
and that's what I want to deal with. The public truth is that the foundation of everything that Chavinga is trying to do lies in the illegality of the activity that was conducted on the 24th of October 2023. If that activity has been cured by way of reconciliation, and you are not delving further into, the consequence of whether you are part of the illegality and so on, and the principal officer that orchestrated that whole thing, matters have been resolved. Why should we entertain a discussion around the byproduct of such an event?
Right.
So, I mean, if the foundation of a thing is null and void, it means the product of that activity is null and void. So to that effect, the claims of Mr. Chavinga, no matter how thou he may exhibit in understanding this, the truth of the matter, he knows that what he's doing is basically just to try and please the UPND. That's how come in his press briefing, to try and show relevance and try and endear himself to Misaka Indechem, he went to an extent of even insulting diplomats, threatening diplomats. That only goes to show you that you're dealing with a desperate boy who thinks that now, with what has happened in PF, his relevance around Misaka Indechem is dwindling. So he has to find another rope to hold on, another string to hold on, and that is to try and suggest that being an ally of UPND, I would deal with diplomats and make such a reckless accusation that the diplomats are working against government with the opposition, and that they will be repatriated or deported through cargo planes and all kinds of things. The UPND government themselves were embarrassed. They had to find a way to technically disown him. But still, when you read what Haimbe wrote, if this was a serious government, that boy is a danger to the relationship of this country with other countries in the way he made pronouncement, especially that he has claimed to associate and be in an alliance with the Misaka Indechem. The president himself should have been able to reprimand the boy. And now that we have these laws that they have enacted, how come Chavinga is still enjoying freedom on the streets? We have a member of parliament in the name of Munia Zulu, who, as a whistleblower, raised allegations of corruption against 2 ministers within the precincts of parliament. As an APNAC member, which deals with corruption, was indicted against the law provided that members of parliament enjoy immunity within the precincts of parliament. What we expect is those ministers to answer to those allegations. They never. The only thing is that is criminal libel. They are taken. He's arrested, taken to court. Those 2 who were accused never even went in court to go and testify to either exonerate themselves or whatever. But he is convicted. And when you read the conviction, they're saying he is unremorseful. Basically, he is convicted because of his conduct in court, and that he never showed remorse. Remorse towards what? Towards maybe the way he conducted his court or around court or whatever it is. Because even when it came to denying bail, you heard the reasoning or the reasons for which he was denied bail, that he has not been repentant. Because when it comes to applying the law, you can never apply the law emotionally. You apply the law based on what it provides.
Right. Now, having submitted the consent judgment, as you submitted earlier, are you seeing an end to this internal drama of people like Chavinga, and will the court pronounce itself based on what you have presented as a matter that pertains a family that wants to resolve these issues internally? Are Zambian people going to see PF finally emerging as a strong, united force?
Mamambo, how is it that if we differ, the 2 of us, and we try to involve a third party to resolve our dispute, and in the process we decide to sit behind us, why are we differing? I think there isn't even anything fundamental. Maybe we misunderstood each other. We shake hands and say, no, we have reconciled. And we go to a third party and say, we have reconciled, and therefore there is no dispute anymore. Can we close this matter? Why should the third party say, no, you can't reconcile. You have to continue fighting. It can never happen like that. Reconciliation is one of the fundamental principles within the judiciary that is encouraged. And if we have reconciled, we have reconciled. And therefore we're going before court with clean hands that we have reconciled in the interest of democracy, in the interest of the country. The issue, Chavinga cannot become a factor, is a product of a difference between ourselves and Mao Sampa, and we have reconciled. We'll deal with Chavinga along the way as a byproduct. He has never been a principal factor in this dispute.
I want to take you to a few things, perhaps, within the UPND administration, but allow me to ask this one last question about your internal issues. There has been sentiments that some amongst your rank and file are abusing their proximity to the Tonse chairperson, and sometimes posting things purporting to be him posting when he basically had no authority, or he had not authorized that, and we saw him sending a word to overturn some of the decisions that were made without consultation. How have you resolved those issues, and can we now take it as gospel truth? Everything that we see on ECL's page, it will be him who has authorized it?
Well, I think it will be it will not be right for me to open that which is closed, because I think internally we have been able to deal with those matters, and the fact that they have been resolved internally, as Secretary General, I think it will not be in my place to open internal matters on a public forum like this. And we think the only thing I can say is that Tonse is an alliance that we are confident will hold, and we are confident that under the leadership of President Edgar Chagolungu, will continue to steer and manage each other in such a way that we never lose focus on what the Zambian people have demanded of us, as individual politicians, collectively as political parties, and further on as an alliance. We are also engaging other political parties out there. It will require a lot of introspection, reminding ourselves that we are not into this to advance narrow agendas. Even among ourselves, for example, as political parties, the reality is that there is justing for positioning strategies, schemes around who would take advantage of the situation to be favored either at individual level as a political party. But I think what should prevail at the end of the day is political maturity and being Democrats, but above all, patriots, those who love their country more than they love themselves, and being able to advance an agenda that is beneficial to the Zambian people and not individual interest.
Yesterday, the Republican President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, officiated at an SDA Dorcas Mothers event in Monze district, a significant religious gathering. But what drew public criticism were the placards bearing his image, seen by many as politically charged. I need to ask you a question. I mean, you're a political player. I don't know if you would refuse if you went to officiate at some event and your name and your face is all over there. Do you believe this incident crosses the line between the state and the church, or should such displays be simply taken as part of modern political engagements?
It can never be considered as modern, part of politics. That's recklessness. Okay. If civil servants, for example, came to praise me and carrying placards, even if it's temporarily for that moment looks like it's a good thing for me because they are praising me and trying to, glorify me as a good leader, fundamentally is wrong. And a responsible leader will immediately rebuke whoever may have organized that. Because you are not going to be president forever. The compromise within which the church, in this case the SDA, has put themselves as a result of raising those placards, it means that after Hakainde Hichilema leaves State House, whoever is going to come after him, they have to lift those placards. That's the reality. Because in this case, the country play double standard. But what is also sickening around this whole thing, especially with the leadership of the SDA Church, is that we hear, and I had to call Honorable Grefford Monde, who's an elder within the SDA Church, to find out whether the rumors we heard were true. Painfully so, he says, I don't want to discuss.
What rumors are those?
And the fact that he happened to have, because he's one of the prominent leaders within the SDA Church, and because there were thousands of Dorcas mothers that were meeting in Monze, and obviously the burden of looking after them, feeding and so on, lies on the leadership of the SDA Church. So he offered that he will be able to provide 12 animals, without knowing that President Hakainde Hichilema, who also said he was going to attend that event, also had promised that he was going to donate 10 animals. Can you imagine? Instead of looking at these donations from a perspective of generosity of these individuals, including President Hakainde Hichilema, the leadership that were there and organizing this whole event decided to politic about it and say, no, we may not receive your donations because the president has also donated 10 animals. Can you imagine that kind of thinking? You see, these are, there are many relatives, and I have a background from that particular church and all that. That is something that should never be tolerated. So if the question is, was Mr. Hakainde Hichilema right to tolerate people from the church, Dorcas mothers and others, carrying those placards? The answer is no. He should have declined politely and said them, put them down. We are here, it's a sacred place, we have come to worship. Let's not politicize this platform and the pulpit.
Some have defended the position taken by the DOCA, saying women were simply showing gratitude to the president, who is also an Adventist, by the way. In your view, does that validate the explanation given, or still it's a blurred line?
Indeed, it's a blurred line. It's stretching it so much.
Right.
Because he's not a president of the SDA Church. He's a member of the SDA Church, but he's a president of the Republic of Zambia. The moment the president begins to associate and begin to politic around the SDA Church, remember, there are radical doctrinal differences among congregations. And if you're not careful, you can actually be divisive as a leader, depending on how you conduct yourself as you associate with the church, the church, the body of Christ in its diversity.
Talking about the ongoing debate around the constitutional amendments, again, the SDA has announced that they do not see anything wrong with the proposed constitutional amendments. They are not the only ones. There is also the Apostles' Council of Churches. They have equally said they don't see anything wrong. In fact, they're in support of the proposed amendments. Does this come as a shock to you that churches now are beginning to endorse what most of you have rejected?
Every dictator has found a way in which they can whip a certain facet of people grouping, church or otherwise, to parrot their narrative. And by virtue of the fact that there are even placards printed, and they are not placards that people have written, where you would see that this is it's like a natural response appreciating the presence of the president. These are well printed in Lusaka by Living Goma, and you get those placards and go and distribute. Do you know the natural placards that usually people give when you are coming, and they feel that they may not have the opportunity to tell you in your face because of maybe the crowd is bigger? It is where people go and get a carton box. They will use either charcoal and so on to write.
Is it not unfair that you should accuse Mr. Living Goma to have been the one who printed those things?
He's a political advisor. In this whole thing.
So it's an accusation, right?
I'm actually telling you that in terms of political posturing, the one responsible for all the... If you see the UPND in Kaputa, in a village, carrying a placard printed from New Horizon, who has paid? Who has arranged even the message? Imagine a person carrying a placard printed on a gross paper in Kaputa, in Kawambwa, Pambasha, in the village, in English. Welcome, Mr. President, you have delivered. Even the person carrying the placard can't read what is written there, but we have said, can you lift when the president comes? They are deceiving Misaka in the HLM. Those same placards are collected and taken to Mongo. Those same placards are collected and taken to Rusangu, a place where the Dorcas mothers were taken. It is not a natural reaction of the people. So Misaka in the HLM is being driven into a bubble of deceitful imagination that people still are approving of his leadership, when in fact the disastrous performance is real in the stomachs of people. Chamene chikamba manje chireranda mamambwe nomba nipa mala na pashupa nomba twalambo kuya kuma hospital na kuma clinics tuambo kusanga timiti takuli because abale tuwafako ba America na bena banaka. So that's the situation that is
if you were to speak to, taking advantage of the discussion around the Dorcas mother and Monze debacle, if you had an opportunity to speak to the broader body of Christ and the pastors and churches, bishops, church mother bodies watching us, right now, in particular as we go towards the election, in terms of politics and the pulpit, and we can't say this is only happening, by the UPND administration. Your administration equally took politics into the church to a greater extent. So I'm not too sure whether you have the moral right to criticize politics that are being peddled from the pulpit, because you did it as well.
Well, I think the perception that would be placed on Patriotic Front in relation to our government relating with the church lied around was anchored around, for example, the declaration of the Day of National Prayer, Reconciliation, Fasting and Reconciliation, which is the 18th of October, of every year. It is anchored also on a pronouncement by the President that we must have a national day, a national house of prayer. And I think the construction works were, being undertaken. They have slowed down under UPND.
And you are the Minister of Religion?
No. I was Minister for Works and Supply, but I'm sure you can host Reverend Godfrida Sumari. She'll be able to speak more in detail. But I think if I understood the implication of the question I've asked, the church needs to realize that they have a greater responsibility over the affairs of the nation, because the church, from a biblical perspective, is the light of this world, the salt of this world. It is the values, principles that all of us who belong to any denominational church that are anchored on the biblical teaching, that should be able to offer human resource that will be able to provide that light, will be able to provide that salt to season our society, so that we can be able to express love, express a desire to benefit another more than you would want to benefit yourself if you're privileged to be, of service to the nation. But the church also has authority from the biblical perspective, but also authority in numbers. Mr. Akaine Ichinema was posturing yesterday around the church, seeking for approval, but obviously the approach could have been manipulative. Even us. Yes, people criticized us because the church groupings that called themselves, Christians for Lungu and all that, the implication and interpretation of such pronouncement suggests that people have lowered themselves from just being men and women of faith who, would want that the nation consistently is going in the right direction. They have now aligned themselves to either a political party or individual, which sometimes the silver line is crossed. I think we need to sanitize the relationship between the church and politics, in the sense that there must never be discomfort to have church people influence positively but maturely the policies of government, and also be able to produce human resource from the church. And if they venture because they feel they are called or they are convicted that they can provide a service, they must be allowed to play that role without abusing that constituency and the sacred desk called the pulpit. I think, remember that President Lungu consistently kept on saying, when we visit your churches, please, it's an opportunity for you to guide us as church leaders, as reverends, as pastors, as priests and bishops. It's an opportunity to talk to us the truth. Don't be afraid. What has invaded the church is this business of politicians donating, for example. So you find that politicians are called to a congregation, and there's this perception that they have the money, so they'll be able to donate, so that you can either fundraise, to build, to do all those things. Even if somebody donates millions of kwacha as a politician, it should never compromise the voice of the church. If they need to be rebuked, they should be rebuked even regardless of the offering they've put in the offering basket. That is what is expected of the church. For me, that will be the counsel of God. What happened in Usangu among the Dorcas mothers was unfortunate.
PF Secretary General, PF and Tonse Alliance Secretary General, Mr. Rafo Nakachinda. Thank you for coming to State of the Nation.
Thank you very much and good evening.
So there you are.
Thanks for tuning in to JQ News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest updates on tech, politics, and everything in between. Until next time, stay cool.